When you're lost in the darkness, look for the ClickerCast. You're joining us once again for another fantastic episode and breakdown of this week's episode of The Last of Us, episode 8 of 9, the penultimate episode of this fantastic HBO adaptation, of course, the wonderful masterpiece video game from Naughty Dog that is The Last of Us. With a runtime of approximately 50 minutes, episode title, When We Are in Need, kicks off this week, and we're here to break it all down with you, the wonderful community and of course audience full of Last of Us fans out there. You're joining myself, Chris, alongside my man of many pixels, returning once again my fellow clicker, Mr. Richie. Welcome back.
Good evening, Chris.
How are you faring this fair evening?
Better than a guy called David.
Oh, and James and a lot of other people. And even if you are fine, well, hopefully you've had a much more enjoyable meal than a couple of people in this show did tonight. Thank you, of course, to everyone
delicious.
Oh, yes. Thank you again to everyone who joins us live every single week. We go live with this very show, 8 p.m. GMT time. So shout out to all the wonderful folks in the chat. Sedna, Jin, Harvey, Don, and Edward joining us so far. And Hungry Moogle as well, dropping the fantastic super chat. We appreciate you all, and of course, your wonderful support too. We couldn't do this show without you, and we appreciate you stopping by and showing your generosity and support for the channel, just like our Helix heroes do every single week from as little as 99p. They support us as a member of our YouTube channel, and they get access to some of our shows, other content early, stickers and badges next to their name. You're all legends out there. Thank you very much, and you can drop some fireflies or clickers in the chat because you have access to that. So thank you very, very much. We're here, of course, for episode 8, Richie. The show's going fantastic so far. It just seemingly is getting better and better. And before we got into the thick of this week's show, I did kind of want to address one of the news stories this week. And that's an odd, rare occasion for television that the viewership of this show is going up week on week. And episode 8, this week's episode, of course, it airs Sundays over in the United States. We get it Monday morning, 2 a.m. In the morning over here with Sky Now TV. Viewership topped 8.1 million viewers, making it a drastic increase from the opening premiere. And this hasn't really happened before. It didn't even happen with House of Dragon or Game of Thrones, where it actually seems to be going up and up. And my guess would be the finale next week will set an inevitable record of most viewed episode to date. What is this? This is unprecedented. This is a video game adaptation.
How do they count the viewers? Is it just live broadcast?
They're very well. They don't really explain that, but I'm guessing it's
that's what I mean. It's like, because I imagine if it's just live broadcast numbers, I can see like week on week as more and more as the show goes on, more and more people talking about it, more and more people catch up, and then go right. This week I'm going to watch it live.
Yeah,
but to be honest, I think live broadcast numbers are kind of just redundant because how many people actually sit down at the time it's scheduled to watch it on like through your cable TV?
I mean, seemingly a lot of people in the United States still, because this is
1 million people.
Premium TV. I know sometimes over here the BBC kind of tally their scores, live broadcast numbers, and then they now denote separately BBC iPlayer kind of on demand after the fact figures as well. So either way, we cannot doubt that how crazily good this all is, and it's a testament to the show's quality. And of course, we'll get into that this week as well, where it'll be exactly the same. And yes, I can increase Richie's quality. I mean, I can't really help with the quality.
Before you do, I've just increased it on my end.
All right, I'll increase you down from my end then. Yeah. Let us know.
So people are still aware while we're still sorting the volumes out. Full spoilers is in effect.
Undoubtedly. Yeah. 8 episodes in, we're into the thick of the video game as well now. So hopefully we're at a decent level where if you were here by episode 8, you're expecting spoilers, quite frankly.
Yeah,
and this episode,
I bring it up because I just saw Fizz in the chat is asking, like, apparently he's behind. So if you don't want things spoiled for this, we're literally about to break down episode 8.
Yes.
If you don't want this episode spoiling for you, probably come back once you're caught up. It'll be left up as a VOD after the fact.
Yeah, 100%.
Did somebody say Justice?
Does somebody say go away and come back and check it at a later time?
Yeah.
Yes, Fizz. Definitely this is episode 8, so go away and check that out and come back at a later time because it will be here on demand. And of course, this show is available on podcast services as well. So just head out there, search for the ClickerCast, and you'll find us on the Last of Us podcast. I'm sure we're up there with the official HBO one and all of the other fantastic people, content creators. Me and Richie, we're big Kind of Funny fans, and they got Troy Baker actually on the show this week for their breakdown. So we can't compete with that, but we can compete with fantastic analysis and breakdown because, quite frankly, Richie, I think we go more in depth than any of the other ones do. We literally break it down scene for scene.
I mean, we can't get the sort of like insight that Kind of Funny had this week. Bear in mind, Troy Baker is both Joel and Buddy Boy.
Buddy Boy, James. Yes, so this week, let's get into it then. Episode 8, of course, we're introduced to 2 new characters whom, if you've not played the video games, will be new to you all especially. David, portrayed by Scott Shepherd in this episode, and Buddy Boy James, portrayed by Troy Baker, of course. Troy Baker played Joel, voice actor Joel, mocap Joel in the video game, so he's very, very popular amongst the kind of industry.
Half of every protagonist in video games you've played the last like 10-15 years.
Absolutely. Booker,
usually him or Nolan North. It's one of the two usually.
Yeah, Booker in Bioshock Infinite. You'll recognise him from the Fortnite trailers. He of course played Sam Drake in Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy, and he did the Joker in Arkham Origins. So again, he's got a lot of range, this guy, and I followed him and Nolan North for quite some time, who originally played David. So the guy who voices Nathan Drake in Uncharted played David in the video game, and I didn't even tell it was him the first time I played through it. So crazy thing there. I was hoping to get a cameo from him at some point, but maybe we'll hold out for season 2. So Richie, episode 8, When We Are in Need, with approximate runtime, as I mentioned, of about 50 minutes. What are your first overall impressions of this penultimate episode?
I was literally saying to you before we went live, this is my least favourite part of this show we do, because the show's been so consistently good. It's consistently excellent. That's just like my first impression. It's another fantastic episode, very well executed. I feel like I'm saying the same thing week on week. I don't really have anything bad to say about this show. It's been fantastic. All the changes they deviate from the game, always make sense and seem to make the story work better in this medium compared to in the game. So, yeah. One more week to go. Let's hope that they can land the last episode.
Yeah, land that plane. I certainly agree, and I know there's loads of people out there who are enjoying it, absolutely, and you're almost expecting, when we got to the halfway point, I was expecting maybe like a slower episode or something that didn't hit his home, and it just seems to just keep going, and like we head into the finale, and knowing how the video game ends, and it is only a short episode, we should point out the finale next week is only about 45 minutes approximate runtime, so it's a condensed episode. If you thought this week could have been a bit longer, then just wait for the finale. But with what they've got to say, I have seen some people kind of begrudge the lack of action, like classic action, I think, was with what they're expecting from a quote unquote zombie show. Would you agree that?
I think it's a fair point to bring up, but I think 8 weeks in, you kind of should know what the show's about by now. It's not an action show. It's not a classic. Here's a ton of zombies, lots of running away from zombies, and that's not the show's about. It's not really what The Last of Us is about, to be honest. In the games, I know there's a lot more action in the games, because in the end of the day, it is a game. You do need action, otherwise, what's the point of it?
Yeah, it would be very short if there was no action sequences.
But what The Last of Us, for me, is revered for is not the gameplay, it's the storytelling. The gameplay serves the purpose of grounding you in the world and telling that story. Where in a TV show, you don't have a control in someone's hands. So just putting random action scenes in there, I'd almost feel like the show. I think the show's better without them, because I think it just, every time you throw a clicker on or a runner, you make it a bit more mundane, to be honest.
Yeah,
this is what happened with The Walking Dead. Like by the end, by even like season 2, the zombies didn't really feel like much of a threat. They were just there.
Yeah.
So with The Last of Us, they just got rid of that. So when they went a different way, it's like when a clicker or a runner or bloater turns up, it's really threatening. We saw that in the last episode. There was one runner in the previous episode, and look how that turned out. It maintains that threat level from them.
Yeah, there's something to be said about it. You don't want to add too much spice to the pot, otherwise you overdo it for everyone. It
keeps your characters nice and vulnerable. It stops like Joel appearing like a superhero, like fighting his way through hordes of zombies and like tons and tons of raiders and things.
Yeah, with those magic bandages.
It's more grounded, it's more realistic of how this would actually play out if this was happening in the real world. So, well, I think it's fair to say, if you're looking for a classic zombie action series, this ain't it. But it was never going to be.
Yeah, Nicola points out in the chat, says far more about human relationships than zombies, in my opinion.
Love.
Yeah, it's love and relationships and how humans, whether
it's kind of the dark side of love.
Well, yeah, they seem evil from a certain point of view, as they say. One thing I just want to add on the whole kind of lack of classic action and zombies and clickers. A big thing for me is you got to remember this show has a budget. It's a show that, as much as it's getting all the fame and glory and we know it as a masterpiece of a video game, there is no true and tied guarantee that if you adapt something to a different medium, it's going to garner the audience, it's going to garner the popularity and the mainstream prowess that this has got. It's only in hindsight you can look back and go, oh, why didn't they have more action? And it might just be that the show has limitations on a budget, and a lot of their budget went on, remember we said last week, the mall was just a one-story mall. They had to CGI the whole top half of the mall in just to make it aesthetically pleasing. We've got the bloaters and all the I think that prosthetic suit the guy wore in episode 5, I believe, that was worth like nearly $500,000 in prosthetics, and it's like those add up very quickly. Shooting on set, cast, building sets, paying actors. Pedro Pascal can't come cheap nowadays, and I just think it's not that they didn't maybe want to include more, it's just that they had limitations set in the real world where you can't just throw everything at it for action's sake.
Apparently I'm still a bit quiet, but I actually think they probably didn't want to include more, because I think sometimes like action, it just becomes gratuitous. I like action, but for me it has to serve a purpose, it has to serve the plot. And if you're just throwing more action in there just for the sake of it, like, I think it would probably harm the pacing of a lot of these episodes and take you away from like the message of each episode. One of the things I've praised throughout the series is every episode kind of feels like different. Nothing feels formulaic. It's like, this is the bit of story we want to tell. What is the best way to tell this bit of story? Then they've just done that.
Yeah.
They're not just throwing things in there just for the sake of them being in there. Well, with games, because you're controlling it, they kind of have to go through these cycles of where, okay, here's a stealth section, here's an action section, here's a story B. You think of like, another Naughty Dog property in Uncharted, you have these different sections throughout the game where you have puzzle solving, you have traversal, you have like action scenes. Maybe you have some like stealth sections, like that changes up. And then you have your big epic set pieces throughout the game that changes up constantly to keep you engaged, keep you going. You don't need that so much in a TV show because you've only got like an hour runtime, so you don't need to change things up so frequently within the course of that hour.
Absolutely, and of course we get to see things from other people's perspectives, which is I think where the human element of relationships and different approaches really plays into, because we get to see how their side of the coin is. And I guess that's where we should kick off and get into the thick of the show reality, is that we start this episode 8. If you
want more action with the same story, there you go.
Of course, yeah, the games always exist. The games always exist. So we start off this week's episode 8, with a literal cold opening. We see winter scenes in Colorado, showing like horrible. It made me feel cold just seeing the opening with the waves crashing against the lakeside, the trees, the forests, and just snow everywhere. Now we're still in winter, and we've actually had a little bit of snow today in the UK, but not quite this level. It starts off, we hear a man, which will become David. We'll just get straight into that. And he reads a sermon from the Bible, Revelations 21, as we kind of pan across like a haggard group of clearly weary people who just don't look like they're in a great mood, quite frankly. They're praying as he reads from the Bible chapter. There's a young girl who starts crying, and we see David kind of stop his reading, and he mentions to the group, I've read this passage too many times, which I guess is insinuating that they've lost a lot of people recently, if this is kind of his go-to funeral speech as such.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. It's like the show does a lot in the first half to make David feel very sympathetic. Like he's stepped up in a difficult situation. That's the first half of this episode with David, really.
Yeah, it's setting him up for his reasons. Again, his side of the coin of why he is who he is in a way. Obviously, that doesn't play out too well. The little girl's crying, so he attempts to comfort the girl. He mentions something about God will wipe away all the tears from your eyes. He explains like this is what the passage is symbolizing. I know, yeah, exactly. There'll be no death after that, and the girl asks if they can bury him, which obviously it's her father that we learn later on has passed away. he does a very sly eye look over to some other people in the group, and this is where we're introduced to Troy Baker's character for the first time, which was one of my initial moment. Was like, hey, there he is. So he gets to make his introduction right at the very beginning of this episode. He's not kind of held off for just the final 5 minutes. Sorry, he's a silent character. He does have a prominent role in this episode, which I think you don't play Joel in 2 full AAA masterpiece video games and then just get a brief cameo. So I'm glad they did him justice in this one.
Yeah, I mean, they could have given him a brief cameo, but they did expand his character quite a lot. Probably more than they expanded his character way more than they did David's, to be honest. But by doing so, it also builds up David's character. So I think it was done very well. It
really was. Yeah, and in the video game, for those who haven't played it, James, aka Buddy Boy, literally goes and gets some medicine and dies. That's all he's really there for. He doesn't do much, but yeah, I think you're right, Richie. It just adds a different dynamic. Buddy Boy.
Yeah, that was his name.
Yeah,
he wasn't even a named character in the game, so they've expanded him to a point where he deserves his own name.
Indeed. Congratulations, Troy Baker. But yeah, he attempts to, as I said, comfort the young girl as she's crying, and when she has to bury her dad, he gives the excuse. He does a sly glance over to James and says, the ground is too cold, we'll bury your father in the spring, which, as a normal audience member, okay, fair enough. We can make assumptions. As 2 people who've played the video games, and we know what David's kind of background and this group's background is to some degree, immediately this is setting the breadcrumbs for a kind of, not a plot twist, but a plot evolution later in the show, which if you're a casual audience member who's not played the games, you might just overlook these things. Like, yeah, it's the dead of winter. Of course we're not going to waste time digging a hole.
The look. Mm-hmm. But is the look just, well, is it just literally like, no, it's not doable? Like,
yeah, like, sorry, is James just the
something?
Yeah. Is James just the guy who usually digs the graves, and he's like, I can't do it right now, it's too cold.
I think this of all the episodes is the one where you have, after playing the games, a lot more insider knowledge. So I can imagine it being a very different experience. Yeah,
I kind of wanted to experience it without my prior knowledge, which is impossible.
Yeah.
Without taking a serious bump to the head. But it does make... I would love to have watched it with someone who hadn't played the games.
See how the second half of the episode plays out.
Yeah.
We both knew what was going to happen. It's more about, for us, like, how it's going to happen.
Absolutely. Hungry Moogle in the chat says, I watch it with my brother, and just after the exchange looks, he said, they eat people, don't they? And I guess you could maybe take that extrapolator from it initially, but
that's an extreme extrapolation from what the information you've just been given.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's pop culture, so you don't know what people have kind of picked up. Like, we've been bigging David up for weeks now on this show, of like, we can't wait to get to his character. It's like, so what makes him so good and rich of a villain, essentially? But we get into that. So the ground is too cold to dig it. We'll bury them in the spring. And then everyone kind of leaves the funeral, essentially, or the sermon or something. And it's very much reminded me of, like, just when you see people leaving church in TV shows and stuff, and they're all thanking the pastor and just going, thank you today, see you next week, Father. It was very much like everyone just leaving and giving each other well wishes, and they'll see you in a week. Don't know where these people are going to, like, in this small, snowy community. Like, do they all have, like, accommodation, similar to Jackson?
I think you can just make this assumption that, yeah, they'll probably have accommodation. I think the settlement's very different in terms of how it functions to Jackson, but I imagine different people have different roles, where Jackson was very much a democracy. This is David at the top.
Mm-hmm.
So they all have their functions to keep the society running. Some people go out hunting, like, well, David and James go out hunting, and other people will deal with other things. We see some people work in the kitchens, that kind of stuff. So it's probably, yeah, okay, we've got together to put this guy to rest. Now back on with your day.
Yeah. Absolutely. And they kind of do that. And David and, I was going to say Troy, but it's James. David and James have a conversation about, like, how serious talk now, how much food have we got? And I get the sense that James is maybe like the food guy or the inventory guy, because David has a discussion about, well, we're short on rations. There's maybe enough to maybe see us out a few more weeks, and a week or two, if anything. And they have that awkward, like, moment where you can kind of see James is maybe faltering a little bit, and he tells David that he hasn't lost faith, the people are just scared, and David's almost got, like, I don't know, there doesn't seem something right with their relationship. Like, they clearly have this, like, leader and follower dynamic, but I think I already immediately get the sense that James is questioning what they're going to do. Yeah, there's something there, and James reaffirms his faith to David and just says they've had a few tough months. And again, knowing what we know, it probably has been a few tough months. The decisions seemingly had to have made, I don't think that would sit well with any human in any right mind.
Yeah,
so no wonder he's a bit shaken.
I think my reading of it is James kind of has begrudgingly accepted the horrible decisions that they've had to make, but it doesn't sit well with him at all.
Yeah.
Where that's like, well, I still have faith in you, David, because I know because James feels like David is just doing what is needed to be done to keep people alive. But I don't think he truly sees David for what he is in his entirety.
Yeah,
probably no one in this community does.
No, well, he's got that front, hasn't he? That front is like, again, a pastor or a reverend or that kind of thing.
He's hiding behind God.
Yeah,
like,
essentially.
That becomes very apparent at the end.
Absolutely, which again wasn't in the game, so it adds a different dynamic to David's character. We then cut away from the snowy climate after David says, "Go grab your guns, we'll go hunting." So they're out looking for food, looking hopefully for for a decent cut of meat, Richie. We cut back to our basement and we learn that Joel is still alive, because it seems obvious to us, but remember those watching at home who haven't seen the game, last week was Left Behind DLC. We don't know what happened really with Joel there, and he was stabbed with a broken baseball bat the episode before. So it's been a long few weeks for anyone looking for some Pedro Pascal action. He's just laid on the floor in a blanket,
having a nap with a very nasty infection. My voice is apparently still low.
I've upped it like several times. I mean, I can just I can crank you right up to, I'm going 176% volume. And
how is this now?
The people can see it on screen that I'm putting it up, so it should be better. Give me your best little pieces.
Little pieces.
Hopefully that's better, chat. We cut to the basement. We see Ellie tending to Joel by giving him water, and clearly he's not in a good state, so she has to kind of feed him water by just like dabbing it on his lips. They're down to the final rations. You can see her kind of share the last bit of jerky with him, and you can almost like sense there's a sense of urgency and desperation maybe creeping into Ellie's behavior and her posture. She's kind of all over the place. She's eating her food a little bit slower than she normally would do, but seemingly stuff's not looking good for them. I guess, again, as a young girl, she doesn't really know what to do next.
Did you kind of think she was going to like chew it and like regurgitate and kind of feed it to Joel? I thought it was going to be like, we didn't actually see her do that. We kind of see her just kind of leave a bit for him. But I thought she was going to like full on like mother hen it, like just chew it.
Like gum it up a little bit and then just feed it into his mouth. Him. I mean, she might have had to resort to that, but seemingly, it was a little bit weird. But yeah, she left it on the side, and I was thinking, like, I mean, that's not even enough, like, for anything really. It's not going to make any difference, that tiny little bit.
They have.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, which was why she decides that she needs to head out and obviously find some food. So she leaves the house, she heads out with Joel's rifle, which is clearly too big for it. It's hilarious how much, like, when she's carrying it around, like, it looks like a massive rifle, but it's not. It's just a normal adult-sized rifle, and Bella Ramsey isn't that tall of a girl, so it's comically large next to her. She goes out on the hunt, she spots a rabbit. Rabbit gets away from her because she's too clumsy and she trips over and falls in the snow. Shout out to the rabbit. Shout out to the rabbit, though, because obviously in the video game, the rabbit gets an absolute arrowhead through the face almost. That's how they basically open up when you find out Joel's been injured, and the game starts off in winter. We see snow, we see a rabbit, and then it gets arrowed, and that's kind of when we realize that we're playing as Ellie instead of Joel. So that was like revolutionary back in the day of like, oh wow, we're not playing as Joel anymore. Is he dead? So that was our kind of like episode cliffhanger of, we don't know where Joel is, we just know Ellie's now out on her own in the middle of winter.
I generally, it was one of them moments you just think, like, have they just switched the protagonists out on us like halfway through the game?
Yeah, you never know. You never know with that kind of stuff. So even though the rabbit gets away, she just stumbled across a deer, and it's nice we get to kind of see her put into practice some of the techniques Joel taught her with the rifle. She takes her glove off, she lays it down on something solid, she takes a breath in when she squeezes the trigger, and hey, it works. She gets a pot shot off at the deer, and it kind of stumbles
not
and
clean kill though. Goes back to the fact that she's not actually very good with the rifle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but she definitely gets some kind of body shot in, which we find out shortly does the damage eventually. So we cut from Ellie over to a different part of the forest, and we see David and James. They're having a conversation over a dead deer, which is a really good, just clever bit of filmography to kind of tie in the two scenes. We as an audience know exactly who that deer belongs to, but where is she? So they have a chat. I did have a little chuckle at this point with Troy Baker's character when he says, can we just take it? I think he says, like, of course you can bloody take it. Like, you're out in the middle of the wilderness, post-apocalyptic. Like, it's not like there's any rules that you've already broken to keep that deer.
It's more, like, to be honest, I'm surprised they're just, in this situation, with the way this is, you see a deer, a fresh killed deer, lying there, clearly being shot. Would you kind of walk up to it so openly like that? I'd be very suspicious.
Yeah.
In fact, you probably had the gunshot.
Yeah, well, the deer, we don't know how far the deer ran away or limped away.
If I was David in this situation, James is going to go check out the deer. I'm staying in the tree line, watching his back, basically.
Yeah, there's a couple of things we could poke holes in.
Yeah.
If we got to, but either way, they're over the deer. They have a conversation around should we take it or not, and then Ellie gets the jump on them. She surprises them both, holds them at gunpoint. I love how the fact that she used a deepened voice for this one. Like, she put on almost her best Batman voice of oh, step away, turn around, drop the rifles. Which again, any kind of adult would see through that immediately that it's just a child putting on a voice trying to be intimidating. And obviously,
just a child, so
yeah, exactly.
She's trying to be intimidating,
and it doesn't do anything because, of course, David doesn't even flinch. He just immediately goes into almost pastor mode of talking her down, speaking her calmly, tries to relate to her, tells him his name. I'm David. This is James. We're from a large group, and it's basically he's not fazed at all that he's being held at gunpoint. Ellie starts this again. She tries to almost mirror his answers. So he says that they're from a large group with women and children, they're very hungry, and she's kind of immediately without pause says, I'm from a large group as well, also hungry. And it's almost this is where the chess battle begins, isn't it? The battle of the minds and the wits between David and Ellie, and we learn later on there's a lot kind of David sees in her in some weird way, but he's happy
from this exchange. David, he knows what he is. And he's very much more experienced at this kind of mental chess battle than Ellie is at this point.
Yeah, he's used to talking to people and having those quick conversations. But David, seems quite happy to barter for the deer. He doesn't push it. He doesn't try and claim the whole thing. He very logically explains that she couldn't carry it all back by herself anyway. So he does a lot of clever, again, mind chess moves to just reiterate. You almost see it in Bella Ramsey's eyes, is when he says you can't carry it all back by yourself. There's almost that drop in her eyelids where she's realizes oh shit, yeah, even if I do get away with the deer, what am I going to do? Drag it back through X amount of miles worth of forest? It's not feasible.
It's that moment where she's realized she's lost the advantage. Mm-hmm. She might be pointing a gun at them, but she can't move that deer on their own. If she tries to move it, they're suddenly tracking her.
Yeah.
So what?
And I think this is where Ellie makes her first false move, is when David offers to barter for half the deer or some of the deer, and Ellie backs out medicine almost too quickly, and it's almost like showing your card in poker way a little bit too soon. Where this is kind of, I think, the first penny drop moment for David, where he realizes that she needs medicine for a very good reason, because she's clearly passionate about needing the medicine. And as an audience, we're kind of don't give it away, don't give it away. And we now know that almost David's got an inclination as to what, more about her backstory. Wouldn't food be more important? But no, evidently she seems driven by medicine for some reason. And he tells James to go get it. And I love the expression on Troy Baker's face here when he's go get some penicillin, go see Steve or whoever back and get me 2 syringes. And he has to explain to him that it's not code. So it's
it's not code. It's
this isn't a secret sneak up on her from behind.
The thing is, it's one of them. It could be codes it could be do what she asks for. Could be walk 2 minutes off into the bush, circle back around, and get the drop on her.
Yeah. I mean, even though he says it's not code, you kind of would feel you're not going to leave your leader, essentially, to the whim of a gunpoint. But seemingly, James does what he's told, as, again, the sheep follow the shepherd, as he says later on. He heads off to get some penicillin, and
shepherd.
And then in this moment, Ellie's obviously starting to... this is where like the big rifle irony comes in, where she's holding him at gunpoint, but you can see her almost like struggling to keep the stock up, and she's like fiddling a little bit, and she's not going to sit there for the next however many hours, because David explains their camp's quite a while away. Do you mind if we go inside? I've got some matches. We could light a fire, essentially.
Not actually acting that. That's not Bella Ramsey acting. That's just Bella Ramsey struggling with a massive fucking rifle.
Yeah, again, if you guys listen to, we definitely recommend you listen to the official podcast, which is hosted by Troy Baker, James, Buddy Boy, and the director and showrunner Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, of course. Every week we say it's on there. They give some really good insight, and in this whole scene, yeah, they gave Bella Ramsey a real rifle, just obviously a not loaded rifle, but a real rifle, so all the weight and heft that comes with it. As she was shooting these scenes and as they were going through them, you can almost see like her upper body strength by the end of the shoot. Apparently, was just, she was absolutely shattered, bless her. So David asked them to move into somewhere warmer whilst they wait, and she tells them to bring the deer, which again, very, very much mirroring what happens in the game. This is kind of my first bit where I thought we were going to get a 1-for-1 video game moment with some infected. And they chose not to. And I did want to definitely address that, because this is a very critical moment, I thought, in the game for Ella and David's relationship. So, spoilers for the game, again, folks out there watching and listening along. But in the video game, they drag in, they have the fire going, the D is there, and then they get attacked by a bunch of clickers and a bunch of runners, which in turn means that they have to brace the room, they hide themselves, they lock themselves in, essentially, have a bit of a shootout. It's very much a video game sequence. However, David pulls a gun out at this moment, and Ellie realizes that he had another weapon on him the whole time, that she thought she was basically in charge with the rifle. They flee, you have a big shootout, there's a bloater, lots of bullets, lots of ammunition, lots of crafting. Quite a tough moment in the video game, actually, Richie, especially if you play on a higher up difficulty.
Well, bear in mind, you went from being Joel, you spent like most of the game collecting weapons and items, upgrading everything, and now you struck back to Ellie with very basic stuff.
Yeah, like rifle with minimal ammo and a few arrows to boot. But with this moment, I think it really cements their relationship, because David didn't pull the pistol on her immediately, and if anything, they both saved each other's lives in this moment. So even though we know David's a bad guy, we know Ellie's history, but there is something together where looking out for each other as two humans against the infected.
It builds the trust.
It does, yeah, it really does, because it's that thing where, as much as like you might not be on the same side, you've got that common enemy in clickers and the infected, and they don't care who you are. They're going to rip you apart regardless. So it makes sense to team up in this moment. And I think that not being in the show, it kind of, for me, it was like, that could have been such a good moment. But I do understand why they might have took it a different direction.
They just went the direction that changed it. It was just Ellie never trusts David.
Yeah.
Which I think if you're going to take that section out, that is the way to do it. Like, you know what? She doesn't need to trust this guy. She has no reason to trust this guy. She's just trying to... It became more of a chess match, I think, in the show, rather than just, okay, mutual trust, then Ellie gets betrayed.
Yeah. And I guess it does allow the more time spent by the campfire. It gives David a good option to turn into an even creepier person with a weird backstory where, again, he tries to pry into Ellie's history, asks her for her name again. He offers a sanctuary very, very quickly. He keeps saying, like, I can protect you. It's very, like, there's reasons you shouldn't be out here on your own. I think Ellie tries to call his bluff multiple times of saying, like, you shouldn't be out here on your own. Like, you're the one being held at gunpoint, arsehole. And, like, typical Ellie fashion. And he's always got an answer, though. He always has an answer.
He's doing the preacher thing at first, where it's like, oh, everything's for a reason. Like, well, maybe we met for a reason. Maybe you should come back with me. We can help each other out. All that kind of stuff. He's trying to find the angle he can use to, like, kind of basically manipulate her.
Yeah, he's putting them threads out there and seeing which one she bites onto. Because it worked with the medicine. He learned about the medicine, which we know him knowing about the medicine is about to become a bit of a revelation for Ellie. He explains that, yeah, he's the leader. These people follow him. He explains that he's a Christian preacher. He was previously a teacher. And Ellie tries to call him out a little bit on him finding God in an apocalypse. And he said it was actually after that kind of triggered it. And it's again, it's interesting because you would presume... I think she says you still believe in God after everything that happened, and he reiterates that no, actually, I found God afterwards, which is that's just not how you'd expect it to play out.
Well, if you've got nothing else to turn to, I can see why some people would turn to religion for comfort. How many people just not going from basically
That's
being
true. That's
non-religious to religious when they've went through like very traumatic things to find comfort in the religion.
That is true. That
So
is a
it's a
very
very
fair point.
believable like situation if he's maybe like probably agnostic beforehand
Mm-hmm.
and he just needs something to keep him going. I mean, again, what we find out about David later is it's basically bullshit. It's a manipulation tactic, but
Seemingly so, yeah. We learn more about David as he tries to open up to Ellie. Classic kind of tactics, I guess. I'm sure they use this in police interrogation to kind of build that rapport, get to know someone, show them that they're equal, you have similar interests, that kind of like align your interest to build that rapport on a very subtle level. And he does it by saying that he travelled from a Pittsburgh quarantine zone, which shout out to Pittsburgh, because remember, all the stuff that happened in Kansas in the previous episodes should have happened in Pittsburgh in the video game. So I think that was like the little throwaway Easter egg to say like, oh, David's from the group in Pittsburgh, potentially. They ran away from Fedra, they escaped the Fireflies when all that was kicking off, and he doesn't believe that there's things such as luck, and he believes, and he's the kicker line, Richie, everything happens for a reason. And he goes into almost like a word-for-word monologue from the game, which I was sat again. I watch this with my wife every week, and it's almost like I wanted to mouth and word it because you could tell what he was going to say next. We didn't expect this winter to be so cruel. We sent 4 of our people to a nearby town. Only 3 of them came back. 1 of them didn't. That person was a father. Then there's a lovely pause, Richie, before he delivers the line. He was murdered by a crazy man. And he says, the crazy man was traveling with a little girl. You see, everything happens for a reason. James, lower the gun.
I know exactly who you are.
Yep.
I've won.
I know why you need the medicine. Checkmate. James, lower the gun. And at that point, Ellie's like, oh, fuck. She suddenly realizes that nothing's right. Camera cuts across. Troy Baker's there with a pistol aimed right at Ellie. And again, David, calm and collected the whole way through. His plan, as you said, Richie, his chess game has worked.
He's in control.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what he loves. This is what he thrives off. So, barely even have to lift a hand for this one. However, in another interesting turn of events, he lets her go. He orders James to give her the medicine. James puts up a bit of a fight. He's like, should we be doing this, David? And he's like, just give her the medicine. Don't talk back to me. And then watch her leave. Which is like, again, we know why he's letting her leave. Ellie doesn't really think twice about that. She's just, again, caught up. Again, as a young girl, she's probably just, oh shit, I've just had a gun point at me again.
Lost the situation. I completely outplayed.
Mm-hmm.
I've got what I need. Just get out of here.
Get out of Dodge. So she grabs the penicillin, heads back, and again, as an audience, you're watching her leave literally in inches worth of snow. Everything in my mind's going, Ellie, footprints. But again, you wouldn't think like there's a panicked child in that situation. That wouldn't even cross your mind. You're just running away from the bad guys. The strangers. That's all you're trying to do.
Just get out of there.
Get out. She heads back. We cut back to the basement and we see Ellie administer the penicillin directly into Joel's wound. Richie, you've got experience in it, biochemistry, that kind of thing. Is it right to inject penicillin straight into the wound, or would it go in the arm, the blood? Like how? Because obviously she's had no practice. Joel's not conscious enough to tell her where.
I'm not qualified to administer penicillin, but I wouldn't inject it straight in. If I was in Ellie's situation, it wouldn't go into the wound. But apparently you don't go intravenous either, so it is usually into muscle tissue.
So right in the arse cheek then, basically.
Yeah, basically, yeah. I think it is usually an arse cheek.
The fat of your thigh or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did think it was quite interesting. Like, yeah, you wouldn't know what to do. Like, she's probably never used a syringe before. We know she was at Fedra school, but I don't know how far. Yeah, exactly. She could have just like squared it on and rubbed it in, for all we know. So at least she does administer it into his body to some degree. It did make me think, pause for thought though, when I was doing the show notes and I was typing all these details up. Ellie, obviously, just quickly fooled by David. Ellie knows that Joel is the crazy man, and Ellie's with him, her father, whoever this guy is. Yeah. Ellie's very trusting that what James gave her was penicillin. She just straight up injects that shit into Joel. That could have just been poison.
I think she probably just rolled the dice on it. What has she got to lose? She
kills him with hydrochloric acid.
Joel's probably going to die anyway, so
True.
she might have read the bottle. Like,
could be anything in there.
Yeah, it could be.
But it did make me think, like, oh, she's just ran away from these people. And
I had the same thought myself. As like, but I don't know. I think I just kind of assumed she just rolled.
Yeah.
What's to lose? If I do nothing, Joel dies. If I do something and they've tampered with it, Joel dies.
It's just plot points, of course. Hungry Moogle, in the chat says, the labels look legit. So you're not going to know. You're not really going to know. But it makes sense. She's obviously desperate to save Joel. So in that moment, we probably all do the same thing. She settles down for some rest alongside Joel in a very touching moment where she kind of rests. She snuggles her shoulder, kind of head, into him and puts her arm over him. Kind of listen to his breathing. I'd imagine he's probably been breathing very harshly in these cold winter nights on a basement floor. We cut then, Richie, to Todd's Ranch. Shout out to Todd's Ranch, the best steakhouse in all of Silver Lake City, or whatever they say it's called.
I recommend the salad.
Yes, I would be very choice getting meat in Todd's Ranch. So we get another cold open, as we see again, same setting, harsh winds, snow everywhere. Not too dissimilar from where Meg lives, I'm sure, up in Canada. Shout out to Meg in the chat. Of course, kitchen staff, Richie, they're all preparing food, what I'm sure will be an absolutely delicious meal for this group up in Todd's Ranch.
Not really, they didn't see the meat first.
They didn't, I did think that. They're not obviously professional chefs, but they're told the fresh batch of meat is coming in, and the guy walks in with a big meat tray full of little cubes of meat, and everyone's looking very shifty, aren't they? We know what they're trying to portray here, but we've got really detailed close-ups of the meat. We've got very awkward-looking body language and a lot of focus on people reacting to, apparently, just a tray full of venison. These people are starving. They don't look very thrilled to find out that there's a full tray of venison coming in.
I think it's one of them reading between the lines, like they kind of know it's not venison, but don't want to really know the answer.
See, it's quite clear that not everybody knows, though. I feel like David obviously know.
The impression I've got is everyone seems very meek. It feels very oppressed almost. They know there's dodgy stuff going on, but they're alive. So it's like sometimes they think it might be in a situation where you're that broken. It's like, just don't ask questions, because you probably don't want the answer.
Absolutely. Like, I used to question sometimes the food that we were given back in school during our lunch times, but
especially when your friends would go missing.
Yeah, exactly. That guy we used to know from school and we never saw him again. But you know what? It can happen. So they're questioning everything. And then the best part of it all, Richie, is as we kind of pan across to everyone getting the kind of venison soup or broth or whatever it is, that's when David and James rock up with the deer, which again is just drives home the message of what the hell were they eating before? Because there's the deer. So that can't be venison, right? But we'll get to that. There's
more than one deer. And they had a conversation about the food supply earlier. So there's still, it's clearly something shifty, but there's still that chances maybe it is just venison.
Maybe it is. That's good eating, to be fair. Yeah. As the group waits to start the meal, we kind of see everyone get they go and collect all the food. They're all sat down in this hall in Todd's Ranch. And they don't start eating, which I didn't notice straight away. That I just presumed everyone was sat around having their afternoon dinner, but they weren't. None of them had started eating just yet. They're all waiting for someone or something. The group starts before they start the meal. David kind of does like not praise the food. What's it called? Saying grace. Saying grace.
Well, before that, he kind of walks in and starts talking about, I'm sure you've all heard rumors, and then goes, "We'll find them in the morning." Basically.
Yeah. It's interesting how them rumours get about, because surely all it was James came back for the medicine, and I'm guessing that he knows the group already. Yeah, the group already knows.
He had to speak. He spoke to the doctor. Doctor tells other people, like, hey, we're giving some medicine to a random child who matches the description of the guy who killed Alec.
Yeah. So they've got their plans, and he does say that we'll head out for them in the morning, but for now, It's time to eat food. Before the young girl, the daughter from earlier on, Hannah, I think she's called, explains that we should kill them. We should kill both of them. Like David wants to bring the man to justice, or what his version of justice is, and the girl says, "Yeah, we should kill him." Which David very quickly turns here, and he absolutely just backhands her onto the floor, slap right across the face. Just and then
right down.
Oh, like... the mother goes to stand up as any mother would, and he just gestures to her slowly, like, sit down. And this is where the crank on how in charge David really is gets ramped up for me.
Yeah.
Where they're not just following him, he has some clear aggressive authority over these people. And we don't really see it until this moment, where there's been subtle hints and nods and the way he spoke to James and some of the other people, but straight up slapping a girl to the floor and no one even flinches. Not even the mother dares call out or question him. This is where it kind of ramps up with there's something extra to David that we haven't quite unearthed yet.
The last time we saw him interacting with the group as a whole was at a funeral, so you're kind of like, oh, well, maybe, yeah, if it's a funeral, people are not going to be in exactly the best mood ever, really.
Yeah, absolutely. He then kind of bends down to the girl to kind of help her back up, and he says, like, oh, I know you don't think you have a father anymore, but the truth is, Hannah, you'll always have a father, and you will show him respect when he is speaking. So he's literally supplanted her dad within a few days, and seemingly is putting himself in that place. Is a very creepy power move.
The way he helps her up as well, he makes her take his hand. It's a straight up power move, like, take my hand now. Like,
yeah,
right. Up you get, sit back down.
Yeah, and then this is where you start to really see the subtle differences. So they sit down, he blesses the food, and David's got a different meal to everyone else. He seemingly has like a big, massive plate of probably venison still. He might genuinely have venison.
Didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, so everyone else has the kind of soup broth thing, and he's got like a plate of meat with a couple of other accoutrements with it. So, yeah, interesting one. And then the group dig in to their blessed food. And again, the camera just pays such added focus to them, shoveling it in, the clang of the pots and the plates. And you kind of start to notice that James Troy Baker's character, he seems a bit reluctant to start putting the meat in his mouth. He looks across the table, he sees Hannah start her meal, cuts to David, he's watching Hannah tuck into her meal. And I guess
a lot of people actually initially go, like, it's like you get a plate of food when you're a kid, your parents make you something for dinner, and you look at it and go, I really don't like this. All right, psych myself up, I've got to eat it, otherwise I'm going to get in trouble.
See, I think the more worrying thing is a lot of them dig into it totally unawares, and seemingly Hannah's unawares that, let's face the reality, I think they're all eating their dad.
I think that's it's heavily implied. Like,
yeah, and I know Hungry Moogle in the chat says, yeah, he's displays of power, but yeah, Chris in the chat says, I was thinking maybe the daughter was eating her dad's meat. I think that is exactly what's implied. And David, seemingly quite content with all this going on around him. He's obviously just the shepherd of his sheep. He's loving life at the moment. He's just asserted his authority and his power amongst these people once again. And then they're all sitting down to tuck into essentially what he's provided them with. The father provides, right?
Yeah. Creepy
ass shit is what this is. And they're all, whether they intend to or not, they're all a bunch of cannibals. Just confirmed right now. And cannibals obviously doesn't sit right with any human being. Quite frankly, it shouldn't. But this does happen. I know my wife watches loads of survival shows from
my wife's a cannibal.
No, not to my knowledge. But she sits down and watches a couple of YouTube channels around like survival instincts and people who've been lost at sea, people who've been lost out in the snowy wilderness in decades, centuries gone by. And there is stories about them basically turning to eating people. There's some really good famous ones you should definitely spend some time researching, looking up into, where there's like people stranded at sea and they basically vote on who to eat first, and obviously once the animals are gone and the rations are gone, it ends up like, who do we pick, eeny meeny miny mo? Just basically pick one and eat one. It's usually the captain who's the last one. The captain of the ship somehow gets to still dictate in that scenario who gets to eat who first.
In that sort of situation, right, you almost be like, go, right, who's the most important people for actually sailing this thing? You guys are exempt for now. Sorry, guy who just scrubs the deck.
yeah, it really is.
Because if the whole thing is about, like, we're doing this, we all agree we're going to do it. None of us want to do it. We know it's not the right thing to do, but it's purely for survival. Then it sucks if you have like a less important job. The guy who like mends the sails and stuff, important.
It's almost, again, it's like in survival instincts. If you were trapped in like a crazy snowy climate and there's like very slim, you just need to basically see out the next, I don't know, till the weather turns, I guess, or the storm secedes, and you're almost like a Death Star. Like you could just, if there's only two, you just hit person with a rock, and then you've got like what, tons and tons of meat to eat. So I don't know. It's not, obviously none of us are ever going to be in that situation, but I can totally see where survival cannibalism can be a thing. So these guys, anyway, they're chowing down Richie. They're enjoying their meal, like unbeknownst to what they're eating. We cut to the next day. Ellie's administers another injection of penicillin before heading out to get Callus. Of course, the horse from the previous episode. She gets him some snow water. And we essentially see some crows fly out from the trees, which we know what's happening. This is David coming to hunt them down in the group, and Ellie notices them and she panics and runs back to Joel. And as they're hunting out, David gives his example. He says, like, look, the girl survives, we'll bring her back with us. And this is kind of, again, where James starts to show a little bit more pushback against David and says, like, look, dude, it's another mouth to feed. What are we doing here? Like, maybe it's just God
already eating people. Like.
Yeah, like, come on. Like, do we really need another person? And this is, I think, where James starts to really see that David has some kind of ulterior motive for Ellie. It's not just about saving a little girl. And he says, like, maybe it's just God's will that she dies out here in the cold wilderness and such. And David gives, like, he
still believes David the preacher exists.
Yeah. And David gives him this very kind of, like, pissed off, like, don't speak back to me, don't talk over me kind of look of, like, again, without really having to do anything, you just have to pause and stare him in the eyes, and you can almost see James thinks, like, okay, yeah, I won't push this any further. So we're bringing Ellie back alive, apparently, as we're on the hunt. Ellie's trying to wake Joel frantically in the basement. She gives him a knife, and obviously Pedro Pascal is still just blazed out of his mind. He's still got no energy. He can't really talk still. His eyelids barely open. But she gives him the knife and says, look, they're coming for us. I'm going to try and lead them away. She heads out on the horse to try and divert the hunters. She shouts at them, hey, motherfuckers. Starts pinging some shots off at them. And this is where, of course, they made him do it, Richie. Troy Baker shoots Callus and kills the horse. The horse dies in the video game as well. It's a sad moment.
Last of Us.
Damn it, he shoots it. And I think this goes back to when Troy Baker played Joel in the game. He never quite understood the name Callus. He says to Ellie, he's like, why'd you call the horse Callus anyway? He just doesn't like that horse, both in the video game and in real life. And in real life, and I say real life, of course, still fictional show with just real live actors, they killed the horse. R.I.P. Callus. We shoots the horse. Ellie hits the deck. She pretty much passes out, and all the hunters kind of gather around her. And one of them says to James, like, finish her off, like, kill her now. And he cocks his gun. He loads it ready to shoot a bullet until David fires one off in the air and says, like, no, she stays alive. If you guys want to seek vengeance, then deliver it. He picks up Ellie, very much in like a survivor, like a fireman rescuing a child from like a fire almost. Foreshadowing for later on the episode, but the way he carries it is very much like
he's narcissistic enough to believe that he is saving her.
Like, these are the hands that will carry you to survival almost. As he walks away again, doesn't ask for help, doesn't ask anyone else to carry her. He takes it upon himself to pick her up under his arms and shepherd her off to safety, essentially.
He's got this warped view of himself of, like, he's such a narcissist. It's like, if you accept me, I will save you. And I think that's the situation I will get into in the next scene, where it's like, with what he ends up offering Ellie, it's like, if you just accept me, we can be partners, and I'll save you. I think this is kind of like him playing out. It's like, well, I'm going to save you. This is me saving you from the bad guys. I'm not the bad guy here. They're the ones who wanted to kill you.
Absolutely. And yeah, Chris in the chat says The Last of Horse. Yeah, it almost is. Not until next season. So we know the guys have gone out, they're spread out door to door, and Joel is almost discovered. We get a kind of atypical searching for someone. She hides him behind the chest of drawers almost. Joel hears him coming. You see him head down the stairs, the hunter, to find Joel. I even called this to the wife. I was like, you think he's lying in the bed, but you know when he gets down the bottom of the stairs, there's going to be an empty bed. And that kind of played out exactly the same way. It's like, yeah, where is he? He's in here somewhere, but we don't know. And brutally, Richie, Joel with his rekindled energy, the penicillin's kicked in. He jumps out and he puts this knife. He puts this knife right in between the guys, whatever the things are that hold up behind your neck, the muscles there.
Vertebrae.
He gets it right in between there, doesn't he? Oh. Drops this guy to the floor, bleeds out.
Very weak. He has one chance. If this ends up in a fight, he loses.
Oh, no doubt. So he uses his...
either he gets the kill in the first attack, or he's done. That's it.
Yeah. Guy's dead. But yeah, you get a very brutal kind of death sequence where they both almost like drop with no energy on the floor next to each other, and you can just see the blood start to pour out of there. The guy's
It's a weird
dead.
kind of smile on his face as well.
Yeah, like psychotic almost.
Yeah.
But he has been eating human for the last several days, so
yeah.
maybe that's what it does to you. Who knows? Cannibalists be crazy. We cut across to Ellie, of course, after she's been roused a little bit. She wakes up in a cage. It looks it's not like a proper prison cell cage. It's just like some kind of storage unit. But she's in a cage. David comes in and explains that she's a dangerous person, and he's almost like just trying to convince her that she's special. And this is the kind of first thing we really see of David opening up to Ellie. So he's done all the chess games by the fire earlier on in the episode, and this is the point where it really starts to hone in on going like, you're special, let me protect you. I can offer you a new beginning if you can find a way to trust me. And he's really starting to kind of almost like reel her into his way of thinking, and he's acting as though like he's offering her this phenomenal new life and chance of a new beginning. And it's like, from obviously our perspective, we're like, who the hell, what are you talking about, you crazy man? And Ellie sees that as well. But in David's world, he's like, he
truly believes what he's offering her is like real. Like, that's why I mean he's such a massive like narcissist to the point where his his view of himself is so warped.
Absolutely, he's like, he thinks he's offering her the like absolute best thing ever.
He's almost believing his own hype when he's like preaching the God stuff. Like, he's almost putting himself playing like that kind of like saintly figure.
Yeah,
he's starting to believe it.
I am the Messiah. I will lead you all to redemption, and that kind of thing. So we cut away. David leaves. We don't really see much of this interaction initially. We cut back to the town where I put a little joke in here, Richie, because we're both big Kind of Funny fans.
Yeah.
And I need to get this in here because the guy who's like kind of scouting through the back gardens and such, the backyards, it literally is the spitting pop of Nick Scarpino from Kind of Funny, if you're familiar with their content or their YouTube channel out there. And I honestly like laughed out loud when I saw it because it's like, it's so true. It's so true. Either way, one of the hunters goes in. He's baited in by a trap. He finds one of his colleagues, I guess, on the floor, unconscious. He goes over to see him and he gets socked in the front of the head with the butt of a rifle. And then we get the scene, Richie. We get the scene from the video game where we know Joel can be violent, brutal, in all the same ways evidently David can be, by the cannibalism part.
A few weeks ago, things come up 3 times.
Yeah.
We've been shown the map. We've been told about the map trick. We've been shown it before. Now it plays out.
Now it's here, he brutally tortures a guy in a chair, beating him. He stabs the knee straight into the thick of the thigh, which is horrible, and then he's got it just
behind the kneecap.
Yeah, just where you don't want a sharp serrated blade to be, right behind your kneecap. Joel, so he's caught 2 of these guys. He's got one tied up against the wall next to a radiator. He's got one in the chair, bloody, beaten to a pulp, knee in his knife right behind the kneecap, and he literally says like, I'll pop your fucking kneecap off. Point to where we are on the map now. Point to where this place is. It better match up with your friends. And this is the tried old tested technique from the game where he's like, tell me the truth.
He basically turns his knife into a marker. Like,
yeah.
Here you go. Even your own blood.
Jams it in his throat, mark it on the map, and if what you tell me doesn't line up with your friends, we're going to have more problems. And obviously, when you've already been tortured to that degree, the guy gives it up, he marks it down, he explains that they're at a resort, Silver Lake Lodge, something like that. Not that it matters, it's not a real town. He marks it on the map. The guy on the floor, he then kills the guy, so Joel just straight up stabs him through the chest with the knife. No second outings for this guy. Goes over, the guy on the radiator, tied to the radiator on the floor, panics, is like, oh, fuck you, guy. He told you what you wanted. I ain't telling you shit. And then again, that final line Joel gets to say where he's like, "That's okay, I believed him." Whack, hits him with a pipe. 2 down.
Yeah.
More to go.
Damn. It's that kind of thing. Is like they set this thing up where it's like throughout the show, it's like, hey, one guy, you show Air's map. Ask the second guy if it matches up. You're good. I trust you. It's like, nah, I'm just gonna choose to trust the first guy. You're both dead.
Yeah, I mean, why would he lie at that point? Because he knows
this is like the darkest we've seen Joel.
Yeah, and we kind of see in the second game as well where Joel may have got this idea from of using this technique, but it's evidently a tried and tested method. He now knows where Ellie is, he knows where he's at, so he's got a sense of location. We cut back to the cell. Ellie's in there, she's looking for a way out, and then all of our kind of thought processes kind of come to fruition now, Richie, where we've sensed about cannibalism, we've hinted at it with the zoom-ins on the food, and they're talking about the venison and the subtle eye movements, but Ellie notices on the floor a human ear.
As David walks in with a meal.
As David walks in with a meal for the evening, which, yeah, it's not really going to go down well, both
figuratively.
This
is one of those situations where David just looks at it and he kind of almost sighs like, I've told them so many times to clean up their fucking ears.
Yeah, stop. Maybe he was using it to listen in. I do question, though, if they are eating human, like, I'm aware of the human anatomy and the layout, what reason have they got to take anything from the face? Are they literally, like, using cheek meat? Lips? Like, I know we eat, like, ox tongue, or we don't, but, like, some crazy people eat ox tongue and stuff, and pig's ears and whatnot.
If they're starving to the point where they're eating people, I think you use all the person.
I guess. You stick it all in a big soup.
Stock.
Oh, there's a lovely gravy on this meal tonight, David. Oh yes, that's ear wax and blood and skin, and either way, there's an ear on the floor, basically. Yeah. Ellie says, like, "Are you going to chop me up into little pieces?" Jokingly, kind of, whilst also being absolutely disgusted by this man. David persists in kind of, again, wanting to know what Ellie's name is. He tells her, like, "Oh, don't judge me," and she like bursts out in anger at him, saying, like, "Don't judge you, you're eating people, you sick fuck." And she literally is like, she really sees this man for truly what he is now. He's a crazy cannibal preacher, like, just awkward leader.
She sees him as worse than she thought he was. Like, let's be fair, like, she thought he was a shifty fucker, probably just same as some of the other violent people she's seen. And the fact that, like, she's seen like an ear on the floor, this is clearly like behind a kitchen, like there's a butcher's block, is like, oh, this is a lot worse.
Yeah, this is worse than I was ever expecting. David explains that, again, he tries to reason with her. He keeps calm throughout all. It says, like, look, it was a last resort. These people rely on me. It's been a harsh winter. And again, we've discussed it in the show earlier about survival cannibalism. Like, I'm sure there is a world, a crazy world, a post-apocalyptic world, where he is just doing, like, what they can to survive. We seemingly don't think they're killing people to eat them, but they just happen to stumble across dead people who they then eat.
Yeah, like, or if someone in the community happens to have like a serious injury.
I guess. Do you think they're voting behind the scenes to who to kill off? Like, if it gets that desperate.
I think that's probably where it's going to go. It's hard to say at this point how far it's went.
Yeah, we don't know enough.
The one thing that I keep remembering, though, is in a short period of time, Ellie came across 2 viable sources of meat in both a rabbit and a deer. There's food out there. But
ooh, so you're saying they've got a taste for it now?
Well, no, I'm thinking it maybe they've turned to this earlier than they necessarily needed to.
Right. So you don't think this is the same situation where I keep going back to McDonald's and getting 20 chicken nuggets? It's not like, oh, you know what? I really like what we had for food last Thursday. Can we have that again, please? Nom, 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 nom.
Food is definitely a problem.
Yeah.
And I think David's made a decision probably sooner than he needs. It's not like there's no stocks. We literally hear James say we've got food for a couple of weeks left.
Yeah.
At the start of the episode, it's like David's made a decision earlier than he needs to. Let's not, rather than probably when he's got bodies like Alex turn up, like, let's not waste this.
Yeah. Yeah, we've also got to think about the scenario they're in. I was kind of thinking when I was watching the episode, like, why don't they just leave? And in the official podcast, the director explains that I mean, just somewhere warmer. Like, you've got the entire United States. You could go live in freaking California, but no, they've picked Colorado for some reason. But as he explains, like, they've just fleed hunters and raiders time and time again. And
moved from one place to the next, kept getting chased out, and this is where they ended up, and then it seemed safe.
Yeah, and the director mentions that when you arrive in Colorado by a lovely lakeside resort in the springtime, there's no snow. It looks quite nice. It's quite remote, so you probably are quite safe from all these raiders. And then, as with our weather, you can have a random, really harsh winter, and seemingly that's what struck them here, where they've been caught by surprise. They've ended up eating people. They don't know how to hunt necessarily because they might not be that way inclined, and they're resorting to crazy, crazy tactics. But Richie, we're still in the cell with Ellie and David. He's still trying to explain to her that he's a really good person. He's a shepherd and he's got all the sheep, and he still explains to Ellie actually how they're a lot alike. He tries to really, really relate to Ellie. He calls her smart. He compliments her loyalty to Joel. But at the same time, he understands that she's got a violent heart. And I guess as an audience, we've witnessed that ourselves. Like, on this very show, we've time and time again said Ellie is clearly drawn to violence. When she sees it in Joel, she's seen it in other people. We've seen it in some of her actions. And David immediately sees this for what it is. He's like, look, you like violence, like I do as well. And he really opens up and says, I've struggled with it a lot in my life. And I feel like he's found a calmness in what he does now, but for all the wrong reasons.
I got the impression that maybe for most of his life, he's hide this violence in him. It's in there. He might have been a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
He might have actually been a teacher when he was just before the world went to shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's only in the apocalypse that he's been, for the first time, he's ever been able to be true to himself. But it's hard to know. But he sees Ellie for what she is. Like, yeah, you're smart, loyal, but you are also violent. You are capable of extreme violence. Like,
yeah, and we get to see the moment where kind of David lays out his truth, which is when the world ended and Ellie calls him out and says, like, oh, what, that's when you found God? You've told me this before. And he reiterates, he's like, no, it wasn't God. It was the cordyceps. And he actually goes down a route that I didn't expect him to go down, which was explaining that the cordyceps, the fungus, it's not too dissimilar to us. It protects itself. It fights for its survival. It spreads where it needs to basically survive. And that they're all not that different. And he's a shepherd surrounded by sheep, and that's what he wants. He wants everyone to survive, but he doesn't want someone who follows him. He wants an equal. And this is kind of where another layer of David's creepy, egotistical, let's go there, pedophilic persona comes into it a little bit, where you realize, like, he not just wants Ellie because she's a survivor. He doesn't just want Ellie because she's violent and she's loyal and she's smart. He wants Ellie because he's some creepy bastard who's got a really, really vested interest in her for reasons that no one should ever have interest in.
From the moment he saw her, basically, as well.
Yeah, so we kind of start to see this now when he kind of...
It wonder, like, Hannah at the beginning.
It does.
Has she been a victim already?
Yeah, quite potentially.
The mother was giving him some pretty dodgy looks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we see Ellie again. He tries to like barter with Ellie more, and he says like, "Look, I can stop them looking for Joel if you want me to." And he really starts to kind of push his agenda on Ellie, and he starts using lines of like, "Oh, think of what we could do together. Imagine the life we could give them all." He's like, he gets softer, and he comes closer to the bars, and he puts his hand on there, and you're like, I mean, from my perspective, I'm like, you creepy fucker.
Yeah.
Ellie, I think this is where Ellie, she kind of gets the penny drop moment where she's like, oh, I know what he's after now. She kind of sees through him a little bit. He's kind of revealed his cards to her. And she's like, I'm going to go along with this to get what she wants, which is, in her mind, she's already trying to calculate her escape route, which is if I can get him closer, she's got
playing chess again.
Yeah, I can see his keys. I can like get him in a sense of insecurity where he's not paying attention. He's not switched on. She plays into his game. She comes over. She kind of goes, oh, I get what you're saying. She puts her hand on him, and then she promptly snaps his finger, which is like, yes, go girl, crunch.
It's like he's got a hand there. He puts a hand. She puts a hand on the bars next to him. She puts it on top and the scores.
Crunch. Yeah. David, again, she's trying to grab for the keys. David slams her against the kind of gated fence, busts her face open and stuff. And then he's like, oh, you stupid little girl. Now, what am I gonna go tell the people now? Because like she's broke his finger, and it's when she finally gives in, Richie, and she gives him his name. She says, Ellie. He's like, what? Tell them Ellie is the girl that broke your fucking finger.
Well, it's one of the most Ellie-isms ever, isn't it?
It is. And it's like word for word what happens in the game. And it's such a cool moment where she's like, everyone, the audience, Ellie are like, yeah, fuck you, dude. Like, I'm not playing your stupid games. And I just broke your finger. So there's my name. Go tell everyone Ellie's the person who just did you dirty.
Well, it's at this point where, like, keeping her name to herself before kind of give her that one thing that he was after over her. She doesn't need it anymore. She doesn't need that card in her deck. It's like, you can have it. I'm going to give you it.
Yeah.
Not because you're asking it. I'm choosing to give you it. It's kind of like the power. It's almost symbolic of where like the power struggle flips. It's like, he's like, yeah, David, you're not winning this.
Yeah, like I'm not into you for that kind of thing. I might be smart, loyal, and violent, but not for you. You creepy.
This chess game we've been playing backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
I'm not playing.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not into that, you creepy cannibalistic bastard. But then, in a horrible way, David does have the last say on this. Just as he's about to leave, he turns back and he says, "How did you put it? Tiny little pieces." And it's like, yeah, he's kind of got you there, Ellie. You're in a cage and he's chopping humans up. So, either way, we cut back. Outside, Joel is searching for Ellie. He's got, again, the penicillin's truly kicked in. He's on the trail now. He finds a storage area, which we
I like how the penicillin's kicked in, because that's how just shot penicillin and a night's sleep and you're back. Yeah. You're fine.
You don't need anything. Penicillin heals all. Apparently.
Well, to be fair, I think there's something to be said that he is still in a very bad situation, but his instincts as a father, and like last time he saw Ellie, she give him a knife, went hide over there and kill a guy. Mm-hmm. I'm going to run away. It's like, no matter what he's feeling, I'm up.
Yeah.
I'm staying on my feet until I find Ellie at this point.
And we know Joel, again, he's got that instinctive survival thing where against all odds, he wants to protect her. He's got, again, whether it's making up for his time with Sarah or it's his newfound relationship with Ellie. Remember, the girl's just essentially saved his life, so he now kind of owes her a life debt in a way as well, but he's really... Yeah,
he's already seen her as a daughter at this point.
Absolutely,
we've already established it pretty much from when they left Tommy's place.
Yeah, and he discovers a trail of blood leading to a storage area where he finds Ellie's backpack, which again is Callus. Like, oh shit! Oh, there's the horse there as well.
Callus, he sees Callus
first.
Oh
yeah, of course, because they'll drag the body back from me. Lots of meat on a horse. Yeah. Just ask, was it Iceland lasagnas or Tesco lasagnas? Yeah. Back a few years ago.
I think it was Iceland, yeah.
Yeah, over in the UK, we have a small supermarket chain, which we found out their lasagnas had horse meat in them, so... Hey!
Not declared, though. The biggest problem for me in that was always it wasn't declared.
But they didn't know, because it's illegal in the UK. So it wasn't Iceland, I think. It was the supplier.
Yeah,
because we don't eat horse in the UK, so it's not that it wasn't declared. I think it's straight up illegal meat.
Is it illegal, or is it just not common?
I think it's illegal. I don't think we eat horse in the UK. I mean, I've never eaten horse
now, but yeah, I don't think I have. I've had one. I've definitely had a lasagna before.
Yeah, I had a lasagna.
It wasn't just lasagnas. There's a handful of different stuff across different companies as well. So it's not just Iceland.
Yeah, true. They were just one of the suppliers. I actually had lasagna tonight, hopefully with no horse in, if I'm honest.
Oh,
look, we're both on the same trick. Little tiny pieces. But we're back yet. The horse is in the storage fridge, and then we all know it's coming. Anyone who's played the game knows this part's coming, because it's a harrowing moment when Joel's got his flashlight out. He's looking around, searching. He finds Ellie's backpack. That's a big oh no. He finds all these frozen meats. That's it. And then he turns around and we see, 3 human carcasses hung up on ice. I don't know how long you've got to let them mature for. Is it 17-day matured steak usually?
I don't know.
Beheaded, no heads.
They're clearly hung as if like to prepare... What dressing? That's what they use when you're dressing a deer. It's the same situation.
Stripped down to the muscles and just the meat.
The innards removed, the heads removed to drain the blood. They're hung upside down.
It's grim. It's very grim. And it's that moment when I saw it, it's like there's 3 bodies there. So they have been doing this for a while. It's not just a case of, the guy died, we ate him while he was fresh. It's like, no, we've got backup bodies in cold storage. If you're looking for good eats, we've got them if we really, really need to. Which is what makes me go back to think like, where are they finding these people? Are they from within their group and they're just voting to pick off the weakest? Or are they actively going out, avoiding the rabbits, avoiding the deer, which Ellie can find quite quickly? Would they have ate Joel if they found Joel? Who knows?
Probably.
Bit of Joel on the side.
Maybe what they do is they go out scout local towns and stuff. They find someone, they bring them back alive, they get questioned, and then get executed. And then the people who went out there don't get sent back out to the next job, don't know anything about what happened to the corpses.
Maybe. And then they just have them with a side of fries and a bun.
The way David controls everyone is kind of that a lot of people just don't ask questions.
Yeah. They're not going to ask questions. Yeah. But we cut back to the cell, so we know Joel's on the hunt. He's found shocking evidence that he's really probably ramped up to find Ellie now. But we cut back to the cell. David and James return to essentially chop Ellie up. They drag her out of the cell, kicking and screaming. They throw her really harshly onto that chopping table, the chopping board table. They've got a big meat cleaver knife that you'd see a butcher with. Ellie's screaming, and then just as the moment David's about to chop her arm off, her head, whatever crazy torture, horrendous thing he had planned for her, James going along with it as well. Just want to point that out. Like, they're not just there to kill her. Like, he's there, even though he seemingly hasn't wanted this, he's happy to play along with killing Ellie.
He hesitated killing her himself.
Mm-hmm.
But is that because David told him not to?
Yeah, true.
Is he more scared of David?
Yeah, quite possibly. Shows you his hold over the whole group. But before he chops her off, Ellie has, again, that last moment ditch effort to survival instincts kick in, and she just screams, "I'm infected." They stop, and she points out to David, "And now so are you." Camera cuts to David. He's been bitten on the hand, so Ellie clearly got a little nibble in while they were frantically dragging her out of the cell. She says, "Everything happens for a reason, right?" And you get that moment where, like, James Troy Baker's like, "Shit, David, like, is that real?" And he's like, no, it can't be. She would have turned by now. And James, like, looks pretty fucking real to me. And you get this kind of panic moment where you've got James, in some way, probably has seen a lot of relief. If David's just been bitten and James thinks he's going to turn, that's his rule over. So James could potentially see, like, a path to freedom away from David's tyranny in that few seconds where he notices he's been bit, Ellie's been bit. Am I free? Am I out? Like, these two are going to die or turn in the next day or two. I'm done. But he doesn't get time to enjoy that potential savouring moment because Ellie grabs the meat cleaver, hack, straight into Troy Baker's neck. That's what you get for killing Callus. Sit down.
He does.
He sits down with blood gushing from his neck, and the camera does sit on Troy Baker for just a little bit to give him that kind of goodbye ode. Thank you for your service, and of course playing Joel fantastically in the video games. But David gets his pistol out. Terrible shot, misses Ellie twice. Ellie flees out into the adjoining restaurant of the kitchen, I guess. And shit starts to pop off. David follows her with his meat cleaver, takes it straight out of James's neck, doesn't even pause for thought for his poor friend or his sidekick or his follower, whatever he is. It just shows you Dave just doesn't give a shit.
He's a sociopath. He's
got eyes for Ellie, and that's who he's tracking down. Ellie starts a fire. Again, terrible throw. Just starts a fire.
It's one of them. For moments, like, was she throwing it at him, or was she just throwing it, thinking, like, I'm going to set a fire that might help here?
I don't think her intention was to start a fire.
It's just probably just panic shot.
Yeah, desperation, like, nah, get away from me. There it is, you crazy man. Yeah, she didn't have any Molotovs. But yeah, the place starts, the restaurant catches ablaze very, very quickly. This restaurant, Richie, I know we're in the dead of winter, and I know it's made of wood. I know it's like a log cabin up in Colorado. But my word, this whole building must have been doused in petroleum or something, right? Because just the tiniest little bit, and you talk half the restaurant's on fire within about 30 seconds.
Fires can spread really quickly, especially if the wood's dry. It's probably been there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It lands on a curtain as well, so fabric catches.
Yeah, very true.
Spreads up the fabric.
What I did like in this moment is it almost gives David a pause for thought, when you can almost see he kind of looks at the fire spreading, looks back to where Ellie's hiding, looks back at the fire, and he has almost like a few takes of thinking, do I deal with the fire right now, or am I still focused on Ellie? And of course his final decision is, I'm after Ellie before this place burns down. Like, he doesn't give a shit when it boils down to it.
Mistake, because he could have just left and he has the keys and just locked the door and just let
Yeah.
Ellie burn to death.
But no. It turns into a horror movie very quickly where he starts to stalk Ellie around between the flames and the fire, and he starts calling out like random statements of you don't know what I could have given you. Neither one of us is dying today. I've decided you do need a father, so I'm going to keep you and I'm going to teach you. And it's like every line he says just makes him more of a creep every single time, which is what you want, I guess, from a show. This is the kind of the big finale, the big showdown, and this is where it's
high. He's just
true colours come pouring out, just like the fire consuming the restaurant. Ellie finds a knife in the kitchen, and she finds an opportunity, just like in the video game. This is kind of like a boss fight moment where you creep around, don't step on the plates make noise, and you have to stab him you stab him like 3 times, right? And then it goes to a cutscene. Ellie takes her opportunity. She stabs him in the side. Doesn't seem to injure him too much. He flings it to the floor. Kicks her while she's down, and then it starts to get like really creepy, isn't it, Richie? He climbs on top of her, pins her down. Bella Ramsey absolutely screaming for her life, like absolutely in like fear, terror, horror, all of the things combined. And again, what can we do as showrunners and directors to make David even creepier in these final moments? Yes, the fighting is the part I like the most. There is no fear in love. And it's just like, you creepy rapist, paedophile, cannibalistic, like tick off everything on the list of what makes someone a bad person. And it's just David embodied. And he's a preacher.
Fake preacher.
Fake preacher.
Which actually makes it worse because he's hiding behind the religion to like do his horrible shit.
Yeah.
He's using religion to manipulate people.
He really is.
So but yeah, like...
Oh, it's getting intense. It's like even talking about it now, I'm like, in that moment, you're just like, oh no, he's a horrible human being, and he's trying to enact a horrible act, and he really is, because next up, Richie, he's clearly reaching for his pants, right? He's got Ellie pinned down. He's got clearly plans for her, and he's just taking it to the max. Where it's like, the fighting is the part I love the most. He reaches for his pants, and then in that moment where I guess he's about to fulfill his ultimate dream, he slips up. Ellie grabs the meat cleaver off the floor, and she just goes to town on his face with that thing. And I saw a social media comment of someone counted the strikes, and I think it's 22 is the grand total of strikes she puts to his face with a meat cleaver. You see this shot where Ellie's almost like getting spattered with blood as fire is enveloped around her. It's almost like the true outburst of violence, but it's all for the right reasons. It's to kill this creepy, sadistic bastard who's about to essentially rape her. And she goes to town on him. And that's the end of David.
Yep, it's 22.
Was it 20? Have you just counted them all?
Yeah, I was counting them.
I thought you froze for a moment.
No, I was counting them. And the thing is, she only really... You can see as she goes, fantastic acting by Bella Ramsey again, that she's getting more and more exhausted with each strike.
Yeah.
So it's almost like if she had the stamina to keep... Bear in mind, she's been shot off a horse. That's got to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
She's been locked in a cage.
Hungry?
She's been almost butchered. She's probably starving. She's having a bad day, to say the least. And then, she'd be absolutely exhausted. So it's probably she probably would have kept going if she had the stamina to do so.
Absolutely. And we don't really see it end, because this is where it differs a little bit from the video game. In the video game, this is where Joel comes in and he stops her from mashing the face. Like, he grabs her from behind, and she's about to turn around and stab him as well before she realizes who he is, and he's like, no, it's me. And they have this really touching moment, but it differs a bit in the show where we actually cut away from Ellie smashing his face in, and we see her leave the restaurant. So she obviously got the keys off David's remains. You see the smoke all come billowing out, and she leaves, very contrast from all the fire and the red into the white cleanness of the snow, blood all down her face. She's kind of lost. You kind of caught disillusioned. She doesn't know where she really is. She's obviously just been traumatized to the high heavens. Joel catches her. She turns around ready to get him again. He holds her face, and we get such a beautiful line, Richie, such a touching moment where he hugs her and he says, "It's okay, baby girl, I got you." And that for me was like, that got me surprisingly emotional. I was like, oh wow, it's that confirmation of all the things we've been watching all these weeks. him calling her baby girl is what he used to obviously call his daughter,
Sarah.
and he's totally just like, yeah, I've got you. I'm here for you.
And
I'm your dad.
the shot lingers on his watch, the watch that Sarah got fixed for him as well. It's like that's such a big moment for Joel, where he's already kind of accepted Ellie as a surrogate daughter. As like, no, now you are my daughter. I kind of liked actually that Joel didn't save her from stabbing David. Because especially with the way it's cut, because it constantly cuts back to Joel, like kind of stalking through the town to Ellie and David. So it's kind of like setting you up to go, oh, like Joel's going to burst in at the last minute and save Ellie, and then it doesn't happen.
Yeah,
absolutely. Ellie has to save herself, but then Joel saves Ellie in a different way, probably a more important way, to be honest, in the emotional ways. Like, I've got you now. Like, we are back together. Like,
yeah, you dealt with that.
You are safe now. Like,
yeah, and there is. I'm sure it'll come back in the next episode. Like the trauma from it. Like she won't be in next week's episode. Just like in the game, she will not be the same person. She will have repercussions from this trauma, and I'm sure like anyone who's has to go through that, like you would not be able to just go back to your normal life after that. And depending on where the show picks up next week, it could be a day later, it could be months later, but there will be repercussions. And again, Joel being there for her from that emotional standpoint, he didn't have to kill David. She did that himself. She put an end to that. He's there again for that, like, again, the father-daughter relationship element of it. So it's okay, baby girl. He's got her. He puts his coat around her, and they kind of head off together. Weirdly enough, heading off towards the lake. I did say that to my wife. Why are they just heading towards water? Of all the directions they could go in, the camera ends with them kind of heading off towards just a mass pile of really ice cold water.
That might have been where Ellie's backpacking. Oh no, he has.
He's got it with him, yeah. But either way, that's just me nitpicking. It was probably a beautiful shot on the shot of the scene. Another thing, I think someone mentioned in the chat way back earlier on when we were talking about the town and where everyone lives. Where's the rest of them? When the restaurants where they all have food is setting on fire and there's gunshots ringing out, no one shows up. Poor little Hannah, like all of the other crew, the chef. Where are they at?
I don't know. To be honest,
they're all enjoying human soup.
It's one of them things where you kind of have to just suspend your disbelief. Like, oh yeah, in real life they would have come, but that doesn't make for good storytelling. You can come up with a million excuses of headcanon to justify that absence. Yeah,
absolutely. But just a couple of things that I thought were funny.
Joe killed them all.
I mean, in the game, he does. He works his way through the town on the way to Ellie and kills about 20 people in the snowstorm. We don't see that. Again, it goes back to should the show have had more action? But then in reality, we know Joel's not a superhero. He probably wouldn't have been able to navigate and kill 10 plus villagers to get to the restaurant. So don't show us it. It's not necessary.
Sometimes less is more, especially in this episode, because when the violence turns up, it turns up in a big, very disturbing way.
It does.
And if you saw, like, it goes back to earlier where if earlier in the episode, like, David and Ellie had to fight through hordes of clickers and stuff, does it kind of water down the violence?
It does. And I think a good part when David's actually telling the story by the campfire and he says, we sent 4 people out and only 3 came back. If he sent 20 people out after Joel and 5 came back, you're like, so this crazy man, he is a madman. He killed 15 people somehow. It does lose that element of impact. But saying, we sent out 4. We're very hungry. We're a small group, women, children. Only 1 came back. He was a father. There's now a daughter out there without a dad. It does have that more human
with a
impact.
Gun that is clearly not hers.
It does have that added impact. So millions of clickers, thousands of runners and infected everywhere, loads of random raiders and hunters, and Joel's able to massacre them all easily and wrapping bandages around and living forever. Penicillin can only go so far. But I do think the decisions they're making in this show, and especially for this episode, because I think this episode was the most beat for beat mirroring of the video game we've had probably yet.
The only bits that are changed, realistically, is the bit where Ellie and David fight off the horde of clickers.
Just gameplay bits,
but
though.
That wasn't really. That was just cut in its entirety.
Absolutely.
And beyond that, it's just adding. It's expanded David and expanded Buddy Boy.
Yeah, Buddy Boy.
To the point where he got a name.
He did. He got a name and a meat cleaver in the neck. But that's it for episode 8. So as we end with all episodes, of course, we look ahead to next week. The season finale, Richie, it's here. 9 weeks we've been covering this here on the ClickerCast. Naturally, the kind of trailer that HBO drop for each week, not showing much off for the finale. We see Ellie and Joel seemingly back together a little bit healthier, away from winter, so we're in a warmer climate. They're heading towards Salt Lake City, where we know the Firefly Hospital is. Ellie and Joel are no doubt tussling with their relationship. They're probably best mates at this point. And all we really see from the trailer is they seem to be flashbanged by a grenade, so this might be the Fireflies catching up with them. And I guess the biggest thing that we're going to expect, Richie, is Ashley Johnson. She's not been in the show yet. Ashley Johnson, of course, who plays Ellie in the games. Troy got his glow up this week. Is next week? It has to be the week we see the flashback to Ellie's mum, right? And how...
Well, we do. She's in the trailer.
She was in the trailer for the beginning of the series, and yet we haven't seen her yet. So
there's only one episode left, and this is a trailer specifically for next week.
Imagine if it was DLC that like brought out a Last of Us episode about Ellie's mum before the outbreak.
Anything about Ellie's mum, it basically is DLC in a way because
it's not in the game.
She's not in the game, yeah. So she's going to expand. I think this is how they're going to where the final chapter of the game is very much just another action set piece for the entire run, pretty much. I think this is where they're going to add, okay, we need some more story elements in. Ashley Johnson pad out Ellie, who Ellie's mum is. It also, I wouldn't be surprised if we opened on it because, and probably maybe even touch back on what happened with Ellie and Riley as well.
Yeah.
Like these kind of threads that have just been dangling about Ellie's infection and her immunity, what could have caused her immunity.
Yeah.
Because I think we're assuming now that the fact that Ellie's mum was infected when she gave birth has somehow led to Ellie's immunity.
Mm-hmm. Quite possibly, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a few flashbacks. I think we could see another flashback for Riley, what happened there. We are going to obviously see Ellie's mum. I think we could get another Joel and Sarah flashback.
I think it's going to be cut backwards and forwards between like Joel and Ellie. I mean, we're basically looking at the look ahead to next week's section here. I think it's going to be like cutting forward between like Joel after probably the initial like meeting up with the Fireflies when we get to the hospital section, when it's just Joel invading the hospital. I think you're going to get cuts between that and flashbacks.
Yeah. And
so you don't see Joel just taking out hundreds of people.
Exactly. And they do have an opportunity to get some last minute clickers and infected because in the game, en route to the hospital, you have to go through an underpass. And in the underpass, there's about 3 bloaters, 10 clickers, and I think about 20 runners or something. It's a big action thing.
That could have been one of the ways they could reintroduce the Fireflies. Joel and Ellie come across, like, get surrounded by clickers and bloaters, and the Fireflies just take them out.
Yeah, we could see we could see how effective the Fireflies are at defending essentially the hospital where they're trying to source a cure. And we'll get this big shout. And of course, we're going to see Marlene again. We've not seen Marlene since episode 1. So we're going to get a lot more detail filled in next week on episode 9.
One question I have for you. Do you think we'll see Abby?
No. I don't.
Do you think she'll be referenced?
No.
Because...
maybe actually. Now I'm thinking of it.
Because I'm thinking there's a scene that could happen right at the end of the next episode where there's a perfect place for Abby to be potentially introduced. Probably not the actor who's going to ultimately play her, but a younger character brought in as an extra.
I think
I wouldn't be surprised if you see an extra who is Abby.
I couldn't imagine. No.
Like how we saw Dina in a similar kind of setting up these other characters.
Yeah. Without going into spoilers for the second game, I think we might get a reference to someone having a daughter.
Yeah.
And I need to do this for my daughter, or if it was my daughter, I wouldn't. And I think they might reference Abby's character, but I don't think they won't have thought that far ahead. I mean, they might have done, but who knows? Really? No, I mean, they'll have thought of that, but I mean, in terms of who they want to cast, and because the show's done so well, they might want to recruit, so they might want to not lean too heavily into that. I think the first game ends
that's why you
so
just cast
well.
Cast a younger actress.
Recasting, though, when season 2 is going to be, 2 years out?
Yeah, so... that's why I'm thinking he's as an extra, a girl who could be Abby, who might not be. It could just be more of an Easter egg rather than an actual confirmation.
Well, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. As with every episode of the ClickerCast, when we round out the show, we lean on you, the wonderful chat and community out there watching along live. Performance of the week. Richie, I always throw this over to you. Who do we dedicate our performance of the week to this week? Of course, David died. Troy Baker died. But I suspect we might not be going there this week.
It's either Belly or it's either Bella Ramsey or Scott Shepherd for me. I think Scott Shepherd did a very convincing job of having me creeped out for the entire episode.
He did. He did, didn't he?
Which so it's like that's what I'm thinking. I'm leaning towards him actually more than Bella.
I like
just
how you
because his job was to creep you the hell out.
He was, and I do wonder because if his character was such an asshole. I don't want to vote for him because his character was so good. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to vote for the
actor.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah. But he did such a good job. I'm bought into the character in such a good way that I feel like I'm voting for the character rather than the actor. And the character's a bad guy. Scott Shepherd playing David did a terrific thing. I liked how you said Belly there because there was a Twitter thing going around from HBO this week where Pedro Pascal refers to Bella Ramsey playing Ellie as Belly. That's his pet nickname for Bella Ramsey. So Belly definitely in the mix for me. I just think Bella Ramsey, she's had little bits that have shined through, but I think this episode was really her episode this week to elevate like the trauma and emotion and the shock and the horror and the fear. It was like, it was so well acted. Like I believed her the entire way.
It's such a kind of like opposite scale of emotion that she displayed compared to last week.
Well,
last week she was showing that very innocent, infatuated young girl. This is like one from just like absolute panicking survival mode to straight up ultra violence, that trying to master like the mental chess game. Like I'm happy to go with Bella.
Chat, what do we think? We'll give it out to the chat to kind of make the decide. If we're stuck between David and Bella Ramsey.
The third time she's got it.
Well, she
got last week as well.
She definitely got last week. Not that influences our vote.
I'll go through them quickly. Nico Parker got the first week.
Sarah,
Tov, second week.
Tess, because they both died, Bill and Frank, because they both died.
Bill and Frank. Like Bella Ramsey, I got episode 4.
Okay.
So, this is the third time winning this.
Well, it's almost like she's a main character.
Sam Henry took 5.
Oh yeah, Sam Henry was good. God, we've had a lot of good performances, haven't we?
Pedro Pascal got his moment in 6.
Okay, well, we'll lean on the chat this time.
Bella got 7.
I should have put a poll rather than just a question. Hungry Moogle says, I'd have to go with Bella. David is a very close second. Don says David gets my vote. Jin says David for sure. Sidnar says David was good, but Bella Ramsey. So
it's 2-2 in the chat.
We're pretty much split. Yeah, I should have put a poll. Not that would have won, but who's going to have whoever's next?
Whoever posts next, the next person I see post wins it.
You get the deciding vote. Well, we go on Bella Ramsey for an amazing performance, a harrowing performance. Bella. Nick gets in with Bella. There you are. So Bella Ramsey, third best performance. Again, it's like she's a main character, Richie. No surprise then. Again, shout out to David though, because I think Scott Shepherd did a lot. I've seen loads of people crediting Bella Ramsey for like all the Emmys and stuff she's going to be nominated for this week. But then I think back and I think
all of them. She's going to get all of them.
But then I think back, Richie, and I was like, but Bill and Frank and Sam and Henry, they were all so freaking good.
They might get like supporting cast.
Oh. Like again, if The Last of Us doesn't sweep all the awards at this year's like whatever the TV awards thing is, the Emmys, the Oscars, the BAFTAs, I don't know what it is anyway. I don't watch any of them. I watch our shows for performance of the week. Rounding it out as well, we always go with moment of the week. So Richie, over to you for the breakdown of the episode. Chat, do let us know what was your moment of the week from this week's episode that you went, oh shit, that is top tier. Doesn't have to be good, can be creepy ass stuff as well. What do we think? Moment of the week.
I think it might just be like the heart of this episode was that kind of back and forth between Bella Ramsey and Scott Shepherd. So I think that came to like its biggest front before like we got into the creepy horror section in the cage.
Creepy horror section in the cage. Chat, if you've got anything else, throw it out to us.
Section, the section before it when Bella's in the cage, when Ellie's in the cage.
You know what the moment for me was?
What?
The one that got me right at the end. It's okay, baby girl. I got you.
Oh, actually, yeah.
Like that, just like all of that build up that we just said.
That's actually more important for the story as a whole, to be honest, in the relationship between. Yeah, you're right there.
That just that line, just the way he delivers that. It's okay, baby girl. I got you, and he hugs her. Is like that is top tier. Like that payoff wouldn't have happened if we didn't have all that amazing groundwork throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, if I'm looking at the just this episode in isolation and not paying attention to the greater series, then I think it's Ellie in the cage.
Yeah,
but I don't think that's the right way to look at this show, because this show is a continuous story from episode to episode and built up the heart, the kind of narrative thread is all about Joel and Ellie's relationship. So that ending is, yeah, you're right.
Sweet. Jin in the chat says, I like they're breaking his fingers for some reason. We should have like an injury of the week because there's been quite a lot of injuries throughout this show as well. Maybe for season 2, we'll bring an injury of the week as well. Just for you, Jin. Just for you. And then finally, Richie, the best game adaptation of the week. So chat, do let us know what was the best conversion from video game classic masterpiece over to real world television. What did it for you? What did you look at and go, that's just like the game?
I think it's probably the diner battle at the end. Like, I know in the game it's a bit more padded out because the gameplay stuff and you're dodging plates and stuff. But there was some moments that took me straight back to where I was when I was playing it. Like,
it's iconic.
The way, yeah, it's so iconic and they've done it so well. Like the fire's going on, David deciding to not leave and to confront Ellie hiding behind the kitchen counters and trying to get the drop on David.
Yeah.
Making mistakes as well because she screams. One of the reasons why I don't think she gets a clean kill is because she screams as she charges.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's the diner battle.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, Todd's Steakhouse. Yeah, everything about it was like, yeah, I'm just in the video game. There was other parts that we saw throughout the episode, but I think even like the little shack that they had their little fireplace in, I felt like if that was a set piece with clickers and stuff, I could visualize like the little corridor where they put the cabinet over the door to block it, and then the bloater drops through from the ceiling. But we didn't have that
piece of the game. It's very much that scenario is the most iconic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think they nailed it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with that. Yeah. So best game adaptation of the week was the diner scene, the diner battle. Said down in the chat says, yeah, Bella gets the award for making sure someone is dead award. Yeah, I'd agree with that one as well. Absolutely.
Confirm your kills.
Yeah, confirm your kills.
21 times.
Yeah, let's just face it. If any of those cannibals were left kicking around, they don't even need to prepare David's body because he's already mincemeat ready to go straight into a burger. he's already chopped up into tiny little pieces.
He's mincemeat. He's soup.
He's David's soup. Absolutely. And on that sick note, Richie, we'll end this week's episode of the ClickerCast. Of course, your weekly roundup of all things The Last of Us, broken down in detail, incredible detail, in fact, tiny little pieces, some would say. Plot for your listening, viewing, and pleasure right here on Helix Plays Games. So, final things, don't forget to run along to the comments, stalk us on social media at Helix Plays Games, clicker that notification bell so you're kept in the loop, blow to yourself and all of our other wonderful content, like our first looks up on the channel of Wolong Fallen Dynasty, whatever we're streaming this week, Richie. I think you and Rob are starting something out for possibly Thursday, Friday. We're still finding out the details for that one.
It's most likely, I think, leaning towards Friday this week.
Friday it is.
Availability.
Friday it is. And of course, check out our weekly podcast, Talking the PS, where we bring you all of The Last of Us and PlayStation news every Tuesday here on the channel. X-Pass, every Monday we round up all the Xbox news for your listening and viewing pleasure on YouTube. And of course, all of our shows are available on podcast servers in the digital clouds if you want to tune in wireless on the go. How else are you going to chase deer down and hunt it if you've got your hands busy watching YouTube? Thank you to everyone in the wonderful chat, and of course all of our fantastic Helix heroes who tune in and support us every single week by joining the channel and becoming a member. Next week is our last week, Richie, of this finale. I do kind of want to think about doing a kind of a review episode where we kind of look at the season overall. Like just a special 10th episode of like kind of looking back and see
you just want that number 10, don't you?
See who we give awards to, just kind of round out and consolidate the show. Maybe our thoughts on what season 2 might entail.
Yeah, we can do it. We can do one more.
We shall see. However, I do have a child on the way
we'll see what your timetable's like
this weekend.
Before we commit to anything.
So we'll see. But keep it locked. And of course, above all else, endure and survive. We'll see you next time, next Tuesday live, 8 p.m. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.